attendance of members of the public will be permitted. However, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access these proceedings. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by following the remote links listed on the posting line. An audio recording of this meeting will be posted on the town's website as soon as we are able. So tonight we are having our annual public hearing, and I'd like to call the public hearing to order. The purpose is to gather input of the needs, possibilities, and resources of the town regarding Community Preservation Act funding for FY24. The public is invited to the hearing with ideas. I've been contacted by a couple of people previous to this meeting, which we really appreciate. And we have invited those people and anyone else who wants to come. And I think we've received some materials from Tony Vieira, who's the commander of the American Legion on Sanford Road. And I know Tim Gillespie was very interested in those, and I hope Tim shows up, but if he doesn't, he'll listen to the recording.
I think he's on.
I'm here.
Great,
What are
Tim.
you talking about?
We're just talking about the fact we've opened the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
We're having trouble hearing you, though.
Hmm.
Okay.
That better or?
Yeah, that's better. Okay, so we're all here. So I'd like to, the purpose of this hearing is for people to come in with ideas and basically to find out if they are eligible for CPA funding and to ask for any kind of help that they would like to have, and to sort of explain in general what the ideas are for the project. So I'd like to start with Tony Vieira, who will discuss the historic building, Public School 15 on Sanford Road, which is now the American Legion. So Tony, you go ahead and do your thing.
Okay, thank you, Betty. Welcome, everybody. I'm here tonight. I did send out a copy of a draft that kind of detailed the history of the American Legion. The building, as Betty had mentioned, it's been around for over a century. It started off as building number 15, an elementary school, a one-room schoolhouse on the opposite side of the street. Then was referred to as a Sanford Road School, still a one-room schoolhouse with outhouses, basically. And they usually had about 35 to 40 people in there. At the turn of the century, we were getting a little bit of a problem from the Department of Education in Boston, and they condemned the school. So the town for a while still ran classes there, but they, in the early 1900s, built a North Westport School, and the state was trying to push the town to take the anywhere from 30 to 45 students on a yearly basis. They felt it was close enough and that they could walk or get to the North Westport School. When it became vacant, it stayed vacant, but one of the issues with the Department of Education was the floor was in terrible shape, was rotting out, and it stayed dormant for a while. And then in the late 20s, early 30s, the American Legion got involved with the town, and they decided they were going to kind of preserve the building. So they jacked it up and moved it across the street to its present location at on Sanford Road. And it became, if you check the town reports and so forth, it became kind of a mutual type community building, but it was called the American Legion building at that point because the Legion folks were maintaining it, paying the utility costs, and really kind of adding on to it. They actually added a back section to it that had a stage for the upstairs. Downstairs, it had a cafeteria, had a bathroom for the first time. Up until that time, they're just outside bathroom areas, outhouses, basically. And the Legion has been maintaining it over the years, but about 20 years ago, right at the beginning of CPC, there had been a couple of opportunities for the Legion to partner with CPC in preserving the building. And the CPC funds were used to reshingle the roof of the building, put in some windows on the side of the building. Great job on both of them. And actually did they dealt with the bathroom situation inside. They had a tank outside that was a sealed tank that was used and pumped out, and still is to this day. And the Legion continued on each year. They paid a year for at least $1 a year for the building, but maintained all the expenses associated with it. We're at the point now where we're still trying to do that. The last couple of years, certainly we've had some challenges. The last time it was done, and Tim could speak to this probably better than I, but he worked with Lino Rigo, who I think served on CPC some years ago. And Tim did some great work. He sent it to me this afternoon. One of the things they were addressing some time ago with Lino was handicap accessibility to the building. So we're at the point now where we need to reshingle the outside. We need to do something with the stairwell outside. There's two of them, one on the side and one in the front of the building. If it really, we couldn't let people in the building. I mean, walking upstairs. Betty tried that about a week or two ago, and I was really kind of concerned. I was trying to catch her to go through a different entrance because I was afraid the stairs would not hold up, quite frankly. So that being said, we felt, we'd like to reshingle, but we should address some kind of handicap accessibility outside getting into the building and address something with the bathrooms. And I'll stop for a moment because I'd like to turn it over to Tim. Tim's done the work on it. He sent me electronically a design, which is very good. And there's other designs people are looking at now. We certainly could put in, an elevator, a lift, those kinds of things. We price them. They're pretty expensive. But we do feel that when we do the upgrade to the shingling, we need to do something to address the handicap accessibility. Tim, did you want to speak about what you had worked with Lino before?
Yeah, Lino and
Just
I.
one second, excuse me. Hugh, could you mute?
I think everybody who's not speaking should mute. There's a lot of feedback.
Yeah, there's a lot of feedback. But Hugh, I think, had a question. Before we go to
I was
Tim.
going to wait until Tim was finished, though. That's all.
Sorry, Hugh?
I said I was going to wait until Tim was finished. I have a thought, but I wanted to wait for you guys to make your presentation, as it were.
Okay. I also wanted to say before, I don't think Tim knows this, that the chair of the Historical Commission and the vice chair went to the school with me just to look at things. So they had some ideas too. They basically think that it's a worthwhile project. That's very important to us. It is a historic building. And they came up with, I think Tony and they came up with some ideas, but we are very flexible on this. It depends upon what both the Historical Commission and the Legion commander and the other officers and members want to do. So we have some leeway to go. So you would like Tony to say, Tony, you would like Tim to say something now?
Yeah, I apologize for that, Betty. I didn't mean to kind of control that, but I just thought I wanted to talk about the Historical Commission in terms of their contributions and some of the suggestions they made. But I just thought when we're on the outside, it might be good to have Tim at least speak a little bit of some of the history, because CPC has been involved in this on 3 different projects in the past.
Right.
And one of the things that have not been accomplished was the ADA compliance part of it.
Correct.
But I don't know all the details of that, and I do want to address that going forward now. But I do know that Tim has done a lot of good work on this and would save a lot of time in the design part of it. We might look at alternative designs, but I think he has a good one.
Okay. Okay, Tim?
Yeah, when Lino was moving things at the Legion Hall, he told me that they wanted to figure out some way to get access to the building that was ADA compliant. And we went sort of around and around trying to figure out a way to get a ramp in there. And they did several different versions of this ramp and finally ended up with one that I thought was the least obtrusive. But because of the elevation that you have to gain, it's a fairly long ramp. It does a couple of switchbacks, but it would work. I think as Tony was telling me that the upper deck where you're going to be landing and where those stairs lead to is not in great shape. It's pulling away from the building. So it looks like any project that would involve this wheelchair ramp, if that were to happen, would also include sort of a reconstruction of that deck up there and strengthening its attachment to the building and the framing and all of that stuff. But that's as far as it went. Lino never pushed to get that ramp done. So I just saved the drawings, and when I saw Tony was doing this project, presenting it, I just sent him the drawing so he could see what I'd already done.
Okay, so I'd like to say at this point, we're talking about the possibilities. ADA is very important to historical buildings and is very necessary. So it certainly fits under the category of CPA funding for historical building for rehabilitation. So that project can be financed with CPA funding. We've done others, and I just wanted everybody to know that, including the guests. Tony?
Sure. Thank you, Betty. You talk a little bit more about the building itself and going into the building. Right now, we're using the lower floor, the basement, which was part of what the American Legion contributed to early on. We've been holding meetings at that area because we have a number of folks that have walkers. They have different limited mobility issues, and they really can't go upstairs. So the last pre-COVID, we started meeting downstairs on a regular basis. And we had a problem with the bathrooms downstairs when we used it as a voting precinct, and the pipes burst downstairs. We took care of that. So there's a lot of expenses have been associated with it. But one of the challenges, I think we got some feedback with some of the maybe on there. One of the challenges downstairs is you almost have to walk in and back out of the bathroom. It's that small. And we have another one that we try to use for voting purposes as a precinct that was a little bit bigger, but it's not handicap accessible at all. And we thought when we're doing the entrance into the building, instead of putting bathrooms upstairs, we could still have those bathrooms downstairs as an easy entrance in and out. But we need to make that handicap accessible. It's easy enough to knock out a couple of walls. Maybe Tim or John or anybody else would like to go by to take a look at it. They could have some input in that as well. We see this as a community building. We know the American Legion's names on that, and the veterans certainly participating. There's 104 veterans that are American Legion members, over 900 veterans in Westport, though. And there's a lot of interest in using upstairs. It's a beautiful building. I've sent some the photographs on. Since we've added the stage and we have hardwood floor upstairs, it's polished, it's beautiful. The windows have added to the appearance upstairs. It's a nice area, and it's something that the community has used in the past. We don't open it up to the community right now because of the safety of getting in and out of the building. And that's a concern with our building inspector as well. So as we addressed upstairs and we did the shingling outstairs, we hope to have some kind of entrance downstairs. And Betty was the one who suggested that I take a look at the annex building, the old Earl School. And what we're doing in the back there with the cement and going in that side door is exactly the kind of thing that would help folks that are going in with walkers and canes from their cars, just getting into the building. So, and we'll have to take that door and open it up a little bit more. So when they come in, they've got a large enough area to turn into the area. So there's some minor things downstairs that would be upgrades. And we wanted to do that at the same time we did the shingling. The shingling, we're kind of going into the advice, and I think it's good. I've mentioned that to a few contractors now, since it was recommended through the Westport Historical Commission. They suggested in terms of the shingling that we look at yellow cedar, and we're getting prices on that. Initially, we were looking at painting it again. It's white paint on there now. I've sent some pictures of what the outside looks, so hopefully you can have a chance to look at those as well. By the way, if anybody wants to come to the Legion, I would invite you to do that. But what we're hoping is that we re-shingle it, we do those structural changes outside, and do a handicap bathroom downstairs. Beyond that, I think we could continue to maintain it for the town. but we don't want to leave it as just maintaining it for the American Legions. That's why I say the town. We've had people who approach us that like to use it for community activities, small meetings. Before Our Lady of Grace Church was built, it was used as a church for a short period of time, I guess, upstairs. That's what I've been told by some of the folks in the area. And, you know, we've kind of gone full circle because right now our precinct is at the extension of the church at Our Lady of Grace. That's where people are voting right now until we can kind of upgrade this facility if we're going to keep it in the future as a voting precinct going forward. But as far as the CPC is concerned, we're kind of embarrassed to go before you. If we kind of feel we can handle anything. So, you know, if we can't handle the expense of some things, but we certainly with little labor, we ought to be able to shingle and those kinds of things. But, you know, I'm one of the younger guys in the American Legion, to be honest with you. And, you know, I've been advised not to try to tackle the shingling. So we're kind of at a crossroads. And not only do we need materials, but we're going to probably have to do something with the labor associated with this job.
Okay.
And we felt if we did upstairs, again, if you take a look at it, we could get some additional income to help, you know, with this going forward. But, you know, we're not going to rent it out for large money, but we certainly can rent it out on a regular basis, whether it's, you know, a scouting activity, or there's some people that approach us for dance where they could use it once or twice. I guess people are traveling to Swansea right now in Somerset. These are elementary age students. Council on Aging has activities where they do different activities for exercise that they need inside facilities as well. So we do think it could be used as a community building again. And the parking is adequate outside, so that wouldn't be an issue. And that income could defray some of the costs associated with what we're doing now and also help us with the utility costs. Last year, we had to put in a new water pump. We had to kind of redo the furnace, but we have a gas-fed natural gas that had some problems with it. So that there's, you know, upkeep within the building itself. It's an old building. But structurally, you know, I think with the work that has been done initially strictly by the American Legion and most recently with the American Legion and CPC, I think it, you know, it certainly is a preserved building that needs a little attention to now. And that's why I'm coming before you. I just would like to kind of reach out and see if it's something that the community is interested in. We have other ways of conducting our business with the American Legion, but we like that building. There's a lot of history there. We want to preserve it. We like the idea that we can provide some activities for other community events there. So we want to be part of the community in that process.
Okay, thank you. Hugh?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer a thought, which may be irrelevant. You guys know a lot more about construction than I do. I know that elevators are expensive, but I see ads every now and then with what they call shaftless, whatever, they just seem to be a tube. If that were feasible, I think that would make things a lot easier than a ramp. And the ramp, as Tony has described it, would have a lot of problems per se. I don't know if it's realistic or not. Tim would know better than I do, probably Tony does, but I just offer the thought of whether there's a modernized kind of elevator which would help.
They are, we have used them in different, I say we, when I worked at UMass Dartmouth, we had to do that in a number of locations. And prior to that, when I worked at Fisher, we did some in Attleboro, we did some down in Cape, out in the western part of the state. They're expensive. They're expensive to maintain. The prices come down a little bit, but then the maintenance associated with them, the hydraulic piece that's associated with them, the challenges on an ongoing basis. And one of the concerns that the Legion members had is they just didn't feel that they would. I mean, you're looking at $80,000 to $100,000 minimum, pretty much to put one in, and they just didn't feel it was going to get the wear and tear on it that they needed to justify the cost associated with it. We have for our meeting purposes, we may have a half a dozen people that will come either wheelchair or a walker or you know, a combination of carrying some medicine, you know, oxygen, you know, with the wheels on it and so forth. So for our purposes, people are more than happy to go along with something other than that kind of investment. And we felt with the community that if they're going to use upstairs, we want to make sure it's adequate for them. And it probably would be better if we had another type of operation. I did go down to the watershed and looked at that again in terms of what they've had. and try to get an idea of the use and so forth. I don't want to tell tales out of school. It's a beautiful setup, but it's not being used that much. At least that's what folks had told me down there. And so there's kind of a return. I think it's very appropriate, the watershed. I'm not second guessing that. I just not sure it would be the same in our situation. We have called a couple of vendors, the more reasonably priced ones and the ones that are doing a lot of work in New England are out of Florida. And we've talked to them. We've got some prices back and forth that, they're going to give us some more. They haven't sent it yet, but we're still looking at 80,000 plus. We have one other alternative. Paul Hebert put one in the VFW some years ago, and it's kind of a lift. It goes up less than what we would need, and we might be able to get away with something like that. But it's the maintenance of it, and they've had a lot of problems where it's not adjusted properly.
Right.
Every time they tend to use it, they've got to kind of recalibrate it because people can't use it the night they're trying to use it. And we just felt, maybe if the town wanted to go that route and they saw other uses for the building, we would support it. But to justify it for the Legion as being the sole person or 90% or 80% of using the building, we just didn't think it justified that kind of expense.
I just want to offer that as a thought. I didn't, obviously you looked into it. So that's fine.
I think we should pursue it more. I mean, it's up to, we're open to suggestions. We would like the input from the town and from CPC in terms of, their thoughts on the building. We're not going to be there forever, maybe there'll be other veterans that will be, but we see it as a community building, a historic building. It ties the community together in many ways in the north end of town. There were two families basically up there, the Bordens and the Sanfords. Back at the turn of the century, and they pretty much have been involved in that whole process of preserving that building initially, and then the selectmen took it over in the early 1900s. But it's a very nice building.
So, of course, we've had 3 projects there. We think it's a nice building too. And the interior work was done by Doug Kiefer and Geraldine Millam. So, I mean, we have a good historic people working there. I think that the 3 projects, the 3 things you're talking about, certainly fit within the ability of the CPA funding to be used. I think there's one more. There's a question from John Bell. John?
Yeah, Betty. Yes, can you hear me?
Sure.
All right. My question is funding. Is there any figures yet on that, or does that have to be determined?
We've got some estimates working on right now, John. I thought I'd have them for tonight. Paul Hebert actually is doing some estimates for us for the costs associated with it. We've got others for the lifts. When we looked at the elevator type situation, we kind of dismissed them. But the price of shingles, we've got the number of bundles we would need and that kind of stuff. And then there's a labor cost associated with how we do this. So we don't have I don't have a complete application to submit yet because I don't have the pricing part of it yet. But I was more, before we went too far down this line, I was more concerned with what CPC thought of it. They'd already invested some money in it. I think it'll be sizable when you reshingle a building of that size and do the work that we're talking about. But if it's something that people are interested in pursuing at this point without making any formal commitment going forward, it's something we can pursue and probably come back within 30 or 60 days with an estimated price. Now, I don't know if that price is going to hold next July, or something, but it certainly could be based on the market now.
Tim?
Yeah, as to shingles, you may be familiar with the fact that shingles are not readily available right now. I ordered 20 squares of shingles about 3.5 months ago, and I still haven't gotten them.
Yeah.
What seems to be more available are the ones that are stained. And it would occur to me that if this building wants to remain white, you could get a shingle that was pre-stained white, and you would have almost zero maintenance of that over the years. You wouldn't have to repaint it. But
we did talk about that, Tim, and the historical commission, the chair and the vice chair. We went back and forth in different options like that, and we talked about the staining. As a matter of fact, I suggested that at one point. And they felt that long-term wise, if we wanted to keep the historic part of it, that there's no reason it has to be white. but the yellow will actually wear like a historic building, and we would paint the trim. So that was their suggestion, and that's the reason we kind of lean towards the yellow. One of the things that we anticipate, if there's positive support for this with CPC, and we know we have to go to town meeting, but even prior to town meeting, we thought that maybe the Legion could take step forward or something and kind of put an order in for the shingles, and hoping that it goes forward. And if not, we still got a shingle available somehow, so we do, fundraisers or whatever. We couldn't get the funds for it, but I didn't want to do the shingling without the other parts, quite frankly.
This will have to go before the Historical Commission. I'd like to welcome Garrett Stuck, this is his first meeting as a representative of the Historical Commission. Janet Jones resigned from both Historical Commission, therefore the CPC. So Garrett will be our liaison with the Historical Commission, and he will carry this information of what CPC says to them, but they're more important. And you have to go to the Historical Commission again, of course. It's more important because you only had 2 people.
Sure.
So you'll go to the Historical Commission with your plans. And I'm sure that Garrett it would be helpful in anything that you might ask him. So this Garrett Stuck, I don't know if you've met each other. Tony Vieira. This is
Yeah.
Garrett Stuck. Okay. Okay.
We hope to do that if you folks feel we should be pursuing it at this point. And John, I hope that by the time we do that, we can kind of zero in on the cost associated with it. But it'll be the cost of the outside stairs, some kind of handicap assessment, the bathrooms inside and making it into one area, knocking down a wall. So there'll be some labor and material costs associated with it. And then the shingles themselves. And we think we can get a handle on that. What happened was Paul Hebert was pursuing another line initially with the lifts. And then when we went to our American Legion folks, they suggested, let's kind of pursue something other than the lifts based on the cost. They felt that, unless you folks suggested you wanted to do that from the community standpoint, they felt that probably wasn't in the best interest of the town to commit that financial amount to that, for an elevator or something like an elevator,
So I wanted to add here that this is considered since you lease the building, this is considered a private sector project, even though it's town owned, but you will coordinate with the town. But we do require RFPs. So, and we have a lot of examples of those. So we'll have to do an RFP. And then you go back to the Historical Commission and they will communicate with us and come to us. The deadline is December. So you have plenty of time to do all of this. Yes, Hugh.
I'm just going to say, and we'll find out that the economy seems to be cooling, construction may be cooling, which may mean that prices will cool as well as you start estimating these things. I understand you have to deal with the current and see what happens, but that is at least a possibility. Whether it happens is anybody's guess.
But you should plan. We, of course, take money back if you don't spend it. That happens quite a bit. So you should make sure that you ask for enough. So Tony, also, because it's private sector, we will have a grant agreement with you, with the American Legion, or so the town and the Legion will agree on certain things. I can give you an example of that grant agreement. But that only occurs once it's approved at town meeting.
Sure.
So, and then we will assign a liaison from the CPC, and it could possibly be Garrett if he's willing to do it. Does anybody else have any nays or anybody opposed to it? And we're not voting, just if you have any ideas. Well, it looks like it's going to work, Tony.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
We appreciate all the work you've done so far and gave us plenty of choices. So thank you very much. We'll
Okay.
see you soon. Next meeting or 2 or 3 meetings from now.
I'll keep in touch and I'll let you know as things develop on our end. And
Thanks
then
a lot.
I'll reach out to the historical commission. I assume they meet monthly. Is that the?
Right.
Okay.
Usually the first month, but first Monday of the month, but they're meeting the 12th. Or, no, I think they're meeting the 12th this month, but usually it's the first Monday.
I'll
And
get in
it's
touch with you,
6 o'clock.
Garrett.
Mhm.
Garrett, I'll reach out to you as well, so you can let the group know. But I'm hoping that maybe November, first part of November, we could get there at the very latest.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good to see
Is there
everybody.
anyone-
I haven't seen you in a while.
You haven't been with us for a very long time. Glad to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anyone else who has any other project here? I can't tell the 3 others. Who's here?
Yes, Paul Olivera.
Okay, Paul. Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. So if I can tell you a little bit, my name's Paul Olivera. I live on Amy's Way. Lived there for over 20 years with my wife, a lifelong Westport resident. I have 2 grown adult daughters now. So really my reason for reaching out to you, and I appreciate the time and the opportunity, is really on behalf of many others in town, and including myself, who've become a pickleball player. For those of you who don't know what pickleball is, it's kind of taken the country over by storm. It's the new combination of, a lot of people will say, combination of tennis and badminton. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but they say it's the fastest growing sport now in the U.S. So with that being said, I know there's been quite a demand throughout really the country, and especially this area of really the lack of courts just catching up. We have so many snowbirds go down to Florida. Florida's been inundated with courts and new developments of pickleball courts. And then the snowbirds come back over here in the winter and they find nowhere to play, or in the fall and the spring, summer. Actually, in the winter, they're in Florida, sorry. So really, I guess, a number of questions. I'm sorry I'm not as prepared as Mr. Vieira. It's my first time kind of reaching out to the board. So like I said, I appreciate your time and any feedback. And I guess, a couple of questions. First off, is this something that you think, the board would be interested in? Obviously, I'm willing to do the work. I've talked to quite a number of people in town who are really willing to step behind this project to go forward with it. And if that means we have to do some private fundraising and whatever else we need to do, we're willing to do it. But coincidentally, when I saw the advertisement, for CPC funding, and I did see, I did a little bit of research. It has been, CPC has funded pickleball courts throughout Massachusetts. I think there's about 20 communities that it's happened in already. But really, I'm just looking for your guidance. And first off, like I said, I'm not totally prepared to give you pricing and locations. And that's something I'll have to do more homework and report back. But I figured it'd be a good opportunity to at least throw the idea out to you and get some feedback.
Could you elaborate a little bit on, do you have a place in mind to have it? Have you talked with anyone who has a place? Do you see that as a recreation commission? Are you asking for help from the Recreation Commission? And when you say you can do a lot of it yourself, what do you mean by that? So there are a lot of questions in there.
Sure. First off, location-wise, I do have some locations in mind, but, obviously I haven't explored them fully. I know the recently acquired campground. I know the school's going to require some of that for some fields, but that's a potential site I would do as. Secondly, maybe there's room on the side of the Macumber School, closer to the skate park. I live on Amy's Way, so I always look at that piece of property. And I don't know how much property's there. I don't know if it's city, town owned, but the piece of property on Drift Road between Amy's Way and Charlotte White, it seems like it's an old piece of Drift Road that's cut out and it's kind of just been abandoned. But I always look at that as such a beautiful area because the stream runs behind that. And, I don't know if we could fit a couple courts there But if nothing else, I've always said I'd like to, look into making that a park, but that's another story. So no, other than that, it's just some obviously community-owned land that I would, have to explore further. As far as when I said I'm willing to do the research is kind of like, what Mr. Vieira's done. Obviously, go out, get the price, get the cost, how much square footage would be needed. I was in my my thought process. I was thinking maybe just a couple courts to start with. So really, just making sure I have all the data for you to report back, so you answer all your questions.
Let's go to Tim. Let's get his opinion. Tim is the Recreation Commission representative to the CPC. Tim Gillespie.
Yeah, pickleball has been a pretty hot topic through our commission recently. Lynn Fours, who is Stephen Fours' wife, is a fanatical pickleball player, and she was lobbying to have the I just lost something. She was lobbying to have the basketball courts behind the town hall annex have pickleball courts painted on them. You could get 4 courts on those basketball courts. And we even had the guy from Dartmouth Tennis was willing to paint the courts for free if we'd allow him to put them there. But at that time, we had on our board someone who was a recreation director in Newport, and he said that pickleball has become fraught with controversy because of people complaining about the noise of the pickleball rackets whacking on these plastic balls. And I think it's a subject that's going to have to be faced. And I think it would be a good idea to have it sort of run through the Recreation Commission. But I think if you can get together people that are interested, like Lynn Fours and the people that she knows, there's a lot of people in Westport that would really love to get into pickleball. I know that. I mean, it could be that they could put some courts on the tennis courts at the high school. They're doing that all over the place, and the pickleball courts are getting used more than the tennis courts. So I think that there's certainly a way to make this happen, and I think it's going to require a group of residents of the town lobbying for it and making the argument and addressing the concerns that some people have about noise and how that could be an issue. But those are the things you're going to face. But you're not the first person to bring this before the town. And I think you have a lot of allies out there. If you go through Lynn Fours, you'll find who they all are. And you could launch an assault on the town of Westport and make it happen.
Tim, what about the WYA? Do they have room?
I don't know. They might. I don't know.
We could check that out. You could check that out also. So do you think the two of you should get together and discuss this, or he should come to a Recreation Commission meeting?
The Recreation Commission is in a little bit of a turmoil right now because we just lost the chairman and vice chair, and we don't have a chairperson right now. And I'm trying to hide behind trees so nobody asks me to do it, but I'm afraid it's going to fall in my lap. But anyways, we're reorganizing now, and I think you could make an appointment. We have a recreation director, Dana Stewart, who's at the Town Hall Annex, and you could ask her to be put on the agenda for our next meeting.
What is your first name, Mr. Oliveira?
It's Paul. I'm sorry if it shows up as Lindsay. That's my daughter.
Yeah.
Last ditch effort. Let's get a computer on.
So Paul,
Paul.
why
First name's
don't you-
Paul Oliveira.
why don't you consider joining the Recreation Commission?
I'll sign up tomorrow. I don't know about
I
vice,
know,
I don't know
but
about
look-
president, but maybe vice president.
No, you don't have
Use
to.
the energy, Paul. It'd be
Yeah.
great.
No, really, I would love to. No,
We
We need more men.
All right.
Yeah. So if you have a couple of people, because you have several openings, don't you, Tim?
Yeah, we do. I think we have 3 or 4.
Yeah, I would, I can definitely lobby to get some more interested parties involved. No, I'd love to do it. Yeah, like I said, I'll do whatever I have to do. Just, and Tim, I appreciate all that input and, to show that you're obviously aware there's a lot of support in town, because I've heard the same thing. The only thing, if I can just, one thing I had thought about, and I talked to the schools, is that the one thing it's always a little discouraging with the schools is that you're very limited of time of play, because the schools, as you can imagine, especially nowadays with security, right? They don't want a lot of civilians walking on and off the courts and access. So that's why one thing in particular, I was trying to detach this from school property, but it doesn't mean, like you said, there's no other options. And you're right, the noise is definitely a factor. The WYAA, and I will pursue that. I don't know if Kenny Sullivan, but he's a friend of mine. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know Kenny, and I will definitely reach out to him. So no, I'll continue to do work, and Tim, I'll definitely be in touch if this, if that's what you guys suggest. I appreciate that.
Hugh, you have a question or a comment?
Right, just for a second, what Tim was saying, but to say that as far as CPC is concerned, we don't develop projects. We review projects that people have developed. And so I think the visiting here is fine to inquire whether it would be within our jurisdiction, and recreation certainly is. But then the direction to follow is Tim's recreation committee and so forth. And the CPC itself is not in a position to help develop the project forward. It has to be developed and then brought in on a cost basis and a support basis kind of thing. It would be eligible is really what we can tell you tonight.
Pardon me, what'd you say, Hugh?
Say it would be eligible.
It's
But
eligible.
beyond that, there has to be something concrete for us to respond to.
It's eligible, and I think that, I'm not getting any negative comments. So anybody else? Liz, did you want to say something? Liz?
This is muted.
We can't hear you. She can't get on. Okay. So does anyone else have anything else to?
Well, I'd just
Well,
say that one of the issues that really needs to be addressed is if you do set something up where we have courts, there's got to be some kind of administration and scheduling of when they're available, and
Right.
controlling trash and having someone be in charge of that stuff. It can't just be, let's have some courts and people just go at it. It's got to be well organized.
And
Yeah.
maintenance also, so you really need to organize, and it will take more than one person. And if the people, and I think talking to, Lynn Forrest is a very good idea, because she's interested and very well organized. So anyway, are there any other comments?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Just one of the things that Tim meant, one of the problems is the noise. I just want to say that I'm a direct abutter to the campgrounds. So I don't know how much noise it makes, but that's all.
Okay, so if you could get in touch with each other, and you talk, Paul, if you talk with Lynn and with Ken Sullivan, and think of other places, could be part of their work. Or at an existing playground. What about, in the North End? I guess behind the annex is not going to work, but if you think of those. So good luck.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the input, and I'll be in touch.
Liz, you must have hit something. What happened to Liz? Liz?
It says she's presenting.
I know, but Liz, are you presenting?
I think she's lost.
Yeah.
Paul, if you get stuck, give me a call. You know how to get in touch with me.
Okay, I appreciate that, John. Okay, thanks
All right.
again for your time, everyone. I appreciate
Good
it.
luck. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has any projects? Anything? Okay, so So I think we are ending the public meeting. I'm supposed to say something in particular, but I don't remember what it is, except we're ending the public meeting. I'm closing the public meeting. So I'd like to open the regular meeting. And the first item on the agenda are the minutes of the August 11th, 2022 meeting. Do I have, and they've been distributed, do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we accept the minutes from the August 11th, 2022 meeting.
Second,
That's John Bell, and second by Hugh Morton. Is there any discussion? Okay, and nobody needs to recuse from, according to Hugh.
I wasn't there.
Pardon
I
me?
wasn't at the
I
meeting.
know. Yeah, I know you weren't.
I discussed it with Buzzy and we're okay.
Pardon me?
I say I passed it by Buzzy and we all agree.
Okay. If you've read them, you can approve them, right? Even if you
Right.
weren't there.
Right.
Wow, that's a whole new thing. Okay, so we'll vote, please. Liz? Liz? Gone. Hugh?
Hugh Morton, aye.
Dale?
Dale Weber, aye.
Garrett? Garrett? You're... Garrett?
Garrett Stock, yes.
Okay, Tim?
Tim Gillespie says aye.
Okay, John?
John Bell, aye.
Betty Slade, aye. That's unanimous. Okay. So, Tim, it's back to you again. Could you do an update on the Town Annex Recreation Project? They're going to be I'm going to be, asking you to approve certain expenditures. And so I wanted an update.
We have a quote on putting an automatic opening handicap door at the south entrance to the gymnasium. I think I sent you that quote. We're looking to sign off on that so that that guy can put it on his work schedule. So that'll become an automatic door. We had the entryway cleaned up and cemented over to make access from the parking lot better. It had some problems because there was some electrical conduit that ran under the walk that wasn't done properly, and it involved a lot more expense than we thought, but I think we have the money in that budget to handle it. So they ended up rerouting that conduit. They put a cement block wall in as a retaining wall, and it's wider than I had originally thought it should be, but it's fine. It makes a very easy access to the back of the annex. And the other element there is the railing of the ramp. We have to clean up that ramp on the inside, and we're going to put up a regular steel handicap railing. I've been talking to the guy that did the railing out in front of the annex for us, and we've been trying to arrange a time to meet together, and we keep missing each other because he's either not available, or I'm in COVID protocol, or I'm in San Diego. So we haven't been able to make it work. And the last communication I had with him was that he was going off somewhere to work. I know he's being called to work on some other project somewhere. And I communicated with him and asked him when would be a time we could get together, and I haven't heard back from him yet. So that's still sort of a work in progress.
So Garrett, this is a project. It's the playground and various aspects of the land behind the town hall annex. I don't know if you've looked at that, but it was approved at town meeting. It's taken a while to get it all done. There's been a lot of private help too, just people who've gone in there and worked like Tim. But we're kind of finishing up now with mostly the handicapped aspect of it. And under CPA funding for historical and recreation, and you can finance those things that help in handicapped accessibility.
The Recreation Commission is also getting quotes from contractors to do some rehabilitation of the playgrounds. And the numbers that are coming in are pretty high. So we don't have the money in those accounts right now to cover it, but we may be coming forth with a new project this year once we get some of these quotes in order.
Okay, any questions to Tim? Okay, so Liz Collins, as you all know, the housing officer resigned as the end of July, I believe, Leonardi. So I wanted Liz to tell us what's happening with the search. And Liz, you're muted. You're muted, Liz. You can't do it. Can you hear me, Liz? Well, it's
Still
my,
muted.
Liz? No. Well, it's my understanding that they have not found a housing officer, and it's quite a complicated project to find them. There have been different difficulties with, some members of the search team were not here, et cetera, et cetera. I understand it was one applicant. I don't know if they're going to be satisfied with that or not, but I wanted us to be aware because the housing office is a substantial part of the expenditures of the trust, the housing trust, and just try to keep us informed. Are there any comments, any questions on that? Sorry, Liz, I don't know what to say. Okay, so there is no correspondence that, except for about bills and things that we've already passed on to you, but no questions or specifically of the CPC other than that. Bills, there have been several bills. So Tim mentioned a couple of them. One of them is the electric work at the outdoor stage at the rear of the town meeting annex, which is 806. Oh, I'd like to go through them, and if there's a hold, let me know. But we'll vote on all of them, except the ones you put a hold on. So electric work at the outdoor stage is $863.62. And putting pine wood chips in the recreation area, that's the first time that they're doing that. We consider that as part of that project. I was asked if we could also pay for the chips in another playground, and I said we could not, because that's basically maintenance. This is now just developing this project. The publication for the public hearing was $58.50. On the town records project, which is an old project now, but we gradually develop things. We have been scanning all of the index cards at the cemetery office, because that is the only, that was the only place that those records exist, is on index cards, handwritten, at the cemetery. And so pretty much preserving those records in case of fire or anything like that, we now have them as scanned documents. The cemetery will be able to use those. So that project is now completed. And the cost was, there were two, it's been over several weeks, $476.25 and $225. So that's the completion of that project. The gravestone restoration is still going on. I think you see it in the newspapers and all over Facebook. So we have three bills, 406.58. That's to Atlas Preservation, where we get a lot of our supplies. And then we have an account at Home Depot. That's 239.44. And then reimbursement to Troy Rebello for expenditures he's made for the last few months of $518.67. And the town accountant has now given Troy a tax exemption form because we cannot pay for taxes out of CPA funds, but we do have a private fund at the Westport Historical Society, so they're paying for the taxes. So those are the total expenditures. Do I have any motion?
Motion to pay.
Oh, Liz,
Oh, I second that motion.
Liz Collins, motion to pay. Okay. Dale Weber seconds the motion. Any questions? Any comments? Okay. So, Liz
Yes.
Collins,
Know about the housing specialist.
wait a minute. We're approving now the bill
Oh, okay.
back. So I'm asking, do you approve? You,
Ms. Collins, yes.
okay. Hugh,
Yes, I just want to make a comment. I approve.
Oh.
But as far as our records are concerned, I keep reading things about scanning and such. Digital is great, but the media doesn't last forever. And so then I think there needs to be some footnote or something or other about a review at some point of a new round of new media or something, only because out of sight, out of mind, it's been digitized. You think it's good permanently. When I read, that's not the case because the media doesn't last forever. So just a footnote for the bills.
yes, on the microfilm, we've of course put microfilm of everything that's in the basement, in the vaults down there. This we're putting on the computer. I mean, we're digitizing it and then putting it into external hard drives at this stage. Everything else we've done that was taped and so forth, we've made into Vimeo. And I know that all doesn't last, but to continue doing that, there's so much of it, it would be very difficult and
But I
expensive.
think we need to have a project or a tickler or something or other. We know hard drives don't last forever. They're convenient to have it on. That's fine. I have no opposition to any of it.
Yeah, I understand.
You simply have to have a tickler that at some point there needs to be a program to refresh what's been done. And it may be simple. It's already in a digital form. You just need to copy to a new hard drive.
You can back up to the cloud.
Yes, right.
Hold
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. We should talk about that.
I don't mean a project, just to note that it's done now and the bills are fine and so forth, but there should be a tickler for the future to make sure it just doesn't disappear in a few years.
Okay. Dale,
Dale Weber, aye.
Garrett,
Garrett Stock, aye.
Tim,
Tim Gillespie, aye.
John,
John Bell, aye.
Betty, aye. That is unanimous. So Liz, you
Yeah.
want to tell us about the housing officer?
Yeah, as you know, our housing specialist left us June 30th. And that certainly has been tough on us. But an RFP went out for a housing specialist. And I was at the bid opening, August 31st. We had only one respondent. And we had anticipated making an award in mid-September, but we have moved up our timeline because of the unavailability of one of our, well, actually two now, two of our search committee members. One is away until September 10th, and the other one just came back. I just got an email from him. So we had to push everything, the whole timeline had to go. And I checked with Jim Harnett. He said, you know, you don't have a problem with that. You can go as far as you want. So right now, the tentative award date is November 1st. And the other thing you need to know is Bob Barboza has been appointed as our acting housing specialist because after Leonardi left on Wednesdays, Bob always comes in and mans the store, and he was doing housing specialist work. And when I found out, I said, you know, we've got to help you here. And so he is now acting housing specialist. And he did get an increase in his contract. And when we get a housing specialist, Bob will go back to our clerk. So that's what's happening right now. And I gotta move it.
Who is handling the accounts? Because I know that Leonardi used to handle all the accounts.
Right. It's going to be both Bob and myself that will handle the accounts. But we haven't really been spending any money. I think one bill will come in from Bob, and that's all.
That's good. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Liz.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else that anyone wants to add that was not reasonably anticipated in 48 hours? Okay,
Move to adjourn.
pardon me, move to adjourn, Timothy Gillespie. Is there a second?
Second,
Second, okay. Liz,
Liz Collins, yes.
you,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Dale,
Dale Weber, aye.
Garrett,
Garrett Stock, yes.
Tim,
Tim Gillespie, aye.
John,
John Bell, aye.
thank you, aye. And Betty Slade, that is unanimous. Our next meeting is October 13th, 2022 at 6:30. And thank you very much